listening to Glenn Beck, and after listening to him, I decided he's no better than the rest of the mainstream media. I'm very surprised. I was listening to his propaganda about Bundy. I was listening to what he was saying, and he said no better than what your typical mainstream media. So, but he did say one thing. He blurted out, and a lot of people probably don't know, which I didn't know. Again, lies about our history. This is the manipulation of population. Giving credit where credit is due. So he kind of blurted out, oh yeah, Rosa Parks wasn't the first person to sit, in the front of the bus. So here we go. So I looked it up. Claudette Colvin. Because she was the first person. Not Rosa Parks. Just a manipulation of history. See, if you don't know your true history, you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going to go? See? And then the big confusion to destabilize you for a few minutes, That's what enemies do. Alright, make you have doubt. My goodness. For a long time, Montgomery's black leaders did not publicize Colvin's pioneering effort because she was a teenager and became pregnant while unmarried. So what? So what? You give credit where credit is due. Given the social norms of the time in her youth, the NAACP leaders worried about using her to represent their movement. Yeah, but you know what? You give credit where credit is due. And that must have did a mental thing on her. That was a mental thing on her, knowing that she was the first, and here you got someone else taking all credit. That's nice. Because she was among the 5 women originally included in the federal court case. Wow. Back in February 1st, 1956. Wow. Yes, Max. Yes, Max. You see? They lie about everything. Everything is a facade. You give credit where credit is due. Just because you don't like, I don't like that. Just like what's going on, I think, right now. Very strange. Good going, Glenn Beck. That's good that you blurted that out. God. And yourself. And remember this. Remember this. Aren't we all related since Noah's Ark? I want you to think about that. So where there's all this division on who and where all of us come from and all the infighting, just remember this. After the flood. So we all come from that, right? So why are we fighting amongst ourselves?
Well, welcome back, and we have Chris Harris on. Chris, you sent me 3 different articles and issues. Let's pull out the most important and talk about it first. We have issues dealing with Fukushima, also the 60 reports on seismic tests to determine safety of nuclear reactors here in America. Similar problems, by the way, around the world aren't being developed or addressed by the International Atomic Energy Agency. The Fukushima situation is getting worse, where even some of the parties, like Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, are trying to divorce themselves from even being affiliated. They have a large 200,000-gallon tank being shipped there. They're trying to divert water by putting deeper wells to pump the water, which is the aquifer or river underneath Fukushima Daiichi, which is an aquifer coming off the mountains. Some of the things they're doing are kind of modestly helpful, but they aren't following a lot of the recommendations we've talked about over the last 3 years. That summary article will be available very soon, and the ebook will be available probably within a week, so people can read through it, including scientists, about nuclear remediation, physical protection, hazmat activities, etc., and the danger to not addressing these issues in other countries or even in Japan. In the United States, probably over half of the reactors are within strike distance of a nuclear fault zone or extreme weather that'll swamp the backup steam turbine, backup diesel generators to protect the cooling systems for the reactor core. We see around other reactors, like in Switzerland, all five reactors in Switzerland are in direct fault line zone danger areas. Most of them are along the European and American coast, along the danger of the Cumbre Viejo super volcano that could slide into the ocean and create 800-foot high waves that could actually swamp all the reactors on the coast of the United States, France, Britain, and elsewhere, because all these reactors sit on the coast. I see Japan's behavior, which is now activating a nuclear reactor south of Tokyo. A breeder-style reactor is another move towards getting ready for World War III with making high-grade plutonium detonators for warheads. All of this is incredibly dangerous and stupid, and they're not dealing with real issues, which is increased geotectonics in Japan, America, and elsewhere, where everything from even around the Yellowstone area is getting more active. How are they dealing with it? First question I have is, how are they dealing with the JASCO initiated report, because before it got replaced as the NRC director of the 60 seismic reports? Are they trying to sweep it under the carpet, or are they actually addressing it?
Hello, Dr. Bill. That's a good question, and the evaluation of the 60 reports have not been released yet, and therefore I don't have them, and I will get them. I keep saying that every year. But on the other hand, I do some research as to what is in these reports. I do know that, and we could go through the Electric Power Research Institute's facet in generating this kind of report. And what they did was they determined which plants, well, first of all, which ones that they wanted to study. And the ones that they wanted to study were the ones called the CEUS, and that's the Central and Eastern United States plants. And what they did was they compiled a list of them. Then they determined from the design basis of these plants what they could withstand in current terms. And that's not the new terms. That's the seismic reevaluation is probably going to affect this number. I was going to say probably going to affect this number. But what they did was they compiled a pretty good table as to, based on what we know now, we want to know how much fat has been put in above and beyond the design basis earthquake that a plant can withstand. And they did something else that's kind of interesting. They tempered that with another parameter called fragility. Now, fragility for a plant means how, always to say, like egg-like that plant is, how thin a shell of the egg this plant has. In other words, what is going to break, where is it going to break, and how critical is that?
In other words, they want to know which of the let's say that you have 400 items in a plant that have had metallurgical tests to see how fragile they are and how many joules of energy necessary to cause a break in that functional structure, like a weld or a support beam. And you're there trying to determine which one will break and what will be the consequences. Will the building subside or fall over? Will you lose containment of a cooling pool and leak out, which will cause a hydrophoric fire? And I don't see any reports telling me that they actually have taken this seriously, either in Fukushima or here in America. So far, they seem to keep the lid on it, and there's been enough days for them to come up with at least an initial report on some of these 60 reports. I think they're trying to just keep the lid on long enough they want it to fade into history. And then, of course, we have the report that you posted and sent to me about John B. Wells, one of the coast-to-coast radio hosts, who is actually pretty popular. He was actually one of the popular ones going back to Art Bell. And I think what happened is, and this is his own words, he was told not to discuss Fukushima on air, but he did anyway. And then this is his quote: "They didn't want it talked about a lot, but eventually it became undeniable." In quotes, "World not rushing to aid Japan because nothing can be done, just getting worse and worse." It's a horror, it's a tragedy video. And basically he said, that this is John B. Wells, that he was removed from Coast to Coast Radio because he was told not to continue expanding and harping on Fukushima. That's pretty significant. And I was right. And I want to repeat this for those people out there who listen to Coast to Coast. Coast to Coast has some very good hosts and some very good people like John B. Wells. John B. Wells was removed. I do not like George Norrie. George Norrie did some very bad things 5 years ago when they tried to have me on the program and canceled at the last minute, and he wouldn't respond properly. I see Coast to Coast Radio as another disinformation op trying to control the story. And this is another good example when John B. Wells was removed, and he says this in his own words now. He's removed because he talked about Fukushima. So you can take it to the bank. They mix crazy stuff with real stuff with really good guests. And then what people do is they shut down and say, well, that's only entertainment. It's not real. So they don't do anything about the fact that they haven't decided that if there's a major release of radiation, they don't have a hazmat procedure to say, I'm going to seal my house off with duct tape. I got 3 weeks of food and water in my house. I'm going to stay indoors while this thing passes, this wave of radiation. They aren't ready to say, I'm going to not be an enemy combatant to go get groceries or do anything else, because if things get really nuts, the government will shut things down and it'll become a form of radiological martial law, where you'll have people in hazmat suits running around with AR-70 machine guns and body armor telling you to go back home that you're an enemy combatant. People say, oh, that can't happen. I said, well, you're living in a different world. If Ebola arrives or Fukushima really becomes dangerous, they'll tell people to close off your windows and doors and stay home. That's what they'll do. And if you don't have enough food or water or other materials so you can exist in your home, that's your problem. You didn't prepare, so tough on you. That's what the government's attitude is.
Well, preparation is key.
Yeah, and I don't have a lot of patience for people who haven't been preparing after we've been harping on these issues for years. And our audience are awesome, but the regular public, they need to start listening regularly to this program. They need to listen and stop listening to the regular newstainment media. They are often doing catch-up, and now even doing news reports. Apparently, this one that you talked about, this radio host John B. Wells, he did a report on NBC News, and apparently he talks about biblical devastation from Fukushima disaster, says a former official. Okay, this is one of the reports that's out here. This is going to get very bad, and it's not just Fukushima. We've got 5 other plant sites that are dangerously likely to be hit by a major superquake. We have the very grave danger that if there's an attack on Iran, they'll hit the Bushehr reactor and cause a reactor core dissolution, which means the entire core is going to blow up and be disturbed over the troposphere over Malaysia, Indonesia, China, and all the way through to America, across the Pacific Ocean, on top of Fukushima. That if we have a conflict, civilization as it is now, we're going to be, in a very short order, America will be as radioactive as the worst places in Fukushima. And there people are having heart attacks and stroke. Children, 10, 12 years of age, heart attacks and strokes, dying, going back to die to homes because the government said we're not going to help you. Here they're not helping people because they're not measuring if your cod from Alaska is radioactive or not, or your veggies because it's strontium and cesium. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and we have Chris Harris here. The progress is coming along fantastic in terms of this new ebook on Fukushima. And by the way, don't even think about reading all the other ebooks out there on Amazon or elsewhere. They really only touch on the edges of the problem. What we have is a book that I put together with the help of Chris Harris and our nuclear experts and reference to other people. Chris is the main contributor. We have new data now that we want to talk about with the TEPCO bodyhead, work level must improve, NHKO. This is really unbelievable. This is April 24th, that's the day. And I want you to tell us exactly what it means. And of course, Nahiro Masuda held a news conference on Thursday. He heads the Fukushima Daiichi Decontamination and Decommissioning Engineering Company, founded on April 1st by the operator of Tokyo Electric Power Company. What's going on here and what happened?
Okay, well, Nahiro Masuda has the untenable job, and he's very recent, in the last month or so, of leading the Fukushima Daiichi Decontamination and Decommissioning Engineering Company. Now, and I was founded on April 1st. Now, he spent the last month going around Fukushima and seeing what he inherited and what his tasks are. Now, last week we had discussed that the ALPS system, which it could be a good system. It's called the Advanced Liquid Processing System. And we talked about that way in the past. I know we were waiting for it to come online. We were waiting for it. That's the device.
And how does that work? This is a filtration system, too. It's a reverse osmosis and basically ion exchange.
Ion exchange, reverse osmosis, filters, and some, I believe it even has
that works if you have
a boiler.
If you have a low flow system, like you're trying to decontaminate water in a home. I think that ahead of that system, they should have what's called an ion centrifuge, where you basically turn everything into a plasma, and you centrifuge out based on their molecular weight and their ionic charge, and you can pull out the isotopes and super concentrate them long before they get near a reverse osmosis membrane or an ion exchange resin, and that would work much more efficiently. But the ALP system they have, whoever their engineers or their chemists are working there, they're basically not very bright. You have to be creative because you're dealing with so many thousands of gallons per day of water. You can't possibly put it through a low-flow system, and then you've got super concentrated radioisotopes in these filters. It makes it very difficult to dispose of them.
Right. Well, how many times have we said it? Let's get to the gist of the problem here. Is that in the original startup of the system, they found that it wasn't installed correctly. We talked about it. It said that there were leaks everywhere. The maintenance was very poor on it. This is way before Masuda took over, and I called him out on it. Being a plant guy, that's the way I'm going to think.
Right, and I like your comment here from this report. It says Masuda said that after spending nearly a month at the plant, he's increasingly convinced the makeshift equipment set up after the 2011 accident, as the workers' awareness has to be improved. In other words, they're untrained people that are sent by Yakuza that are putting in equipment in an improper manner that doesn't do the proper performance that they want in the first place, which means they don't know what the heck they're doing.
Ironically, that's not my comment today. Ironically, that's the NHK's article. I boldly, if you could see that was our comment years ago.
It was our comment basically 2 years ago plus, but now Masuda is now saying the same thing we said 2.5 years ago.
Correct. And that's the point. They needed this guy to come in here with another set of eyes to look at the problem and say, what was good enough and to go get along is not going to cut it anymore. We're in a new world now for this plant. This isn't Kansas anymore. You can't do like you've always done and expect something good to come out of it. And so he's there to shake them up and to change procedures and to do all kinds of stuff. It's a big job. But in other respects, just as you said, they're getting unskilled labor. They're getting folks all their resources of skill is either not going to work there anymore. They've got so dosed out they can't go into the plant doing the work.
You're saying basically that they want to basically divorce themselves of any responsibility, so they figure by becoming invisible they'll lose legal responsibility. And I don't think that's going to work. I think that these are people, their media people are delusional, from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, etc.
This is not going to happen by itself. It's going to take a lot of training and a lot of dedication, and certainly we haven't seen that level of dedication amongst the new people. It was just basically quick, get in there, slap it together, and then get out as fast as you can. It's going to have to be, and then they may have to put into service some of the low-dose ideas that we've come up with, creating low-dose areas where people can work and to actually extend their stay times and to do the work properly. And then you'll see improvement. I'm just hoping that Masuda is the guy to go ahead and carry that through. So
now, Chris, what's going to happen in America here? The lid's been still kept on JASCO's initial push a few years ago to start doing seismic testing and reevaluate the safety of plants all across America. I don't see any moves whatsoever to actually respond to these seismic reports. What's happening?
Well, that's just going back to what we were talking before about the fragility index. The numbers have shifted towards an acceptable but lessened the plants, the plants are moving. This is the wacky world of probabilistic risk assessment. 10 to the minus 4 events per year, core melt events due to a seismic issue is the cutoff line. Most of the plants have moved closer to that threshold, but they're still within the threshold of 10 to the minus 4. But we won't know until these other reports are tempered by the results of the other reports.
But let's go through the technical gobbledygook. What it basically means is a plant that was previously certified for 6.5 or 6.7 earthquake won't tolerate a 4.5, which means that most of the nuclear plants in America, the majority of them, are near strike zones of nuclear fault zones, and they're actually going to fail.
It's likely that they've taken a step towards the likely to fail.
Right. What are they going to do about it? I mean, they have three options. They can shut down the plant and put it in cold storage, and then they have to basically start moving nuclear material off in casks and trying to gradually empty out the cooling pool fluid fuel rod assemblies. Number two, they can replace it with a liquid natural gas system, which we proposed before, that's non-nuclear, and remove these nuclear materials from the site. And the third option is they can replace it with updated nuclear technology like pebble bed reactors from South Africa and CANDU reactors like the Canadians have that don't create high-grade uranium, don't create plutonium detonators or MOX reactor fuel pellets for nuclear weapons, and are considerably safer. Are there any moves like that? Because what I see happening is a lot of these plants are even their diesel generators are below the swamp line or the water line, where the diesel generators for water intake is actually below the high water mark, which means they're likely to be swamped with extreme weather. When you have a combination of things like geotectonics and earthquakes increasing and extreme weather, which is predicted not because of global warming, it's because of global climate change, which is increasing, we're going to have some major storms that are going to probably compromise a number of nuclear plants. And I don't think they're prepared for it at all. I think that we're not prepared for the power grid going down or losing equipment. We're not prepared for nuclear reactors losing containment. We're basically not prepared for anything. And I think they're going to try to whitewash this. They want it to go just like the Bundy Ranch issue. They want to tell people, we're not going to do anything. And then before you know it, you got multitask forces attacking the people at the Bundy Ranch. And they're right back at it, trying to go after the people in the Bunkerville area and the Bundy Ranch, trying to see if they can still enforce these rules that the Bureau of Land Management. The same thing goes here. They're going to try to keep it in the back burner of the news until it fades out of sight. But of course, independently, we're going to be doing testing of materials and fish, etc. I'm going to be doing testing myself over the rest of this year at certified labs. Like we have the Geordie Lab is one of the good ones, Geordie Lab. And what's happening? I mean, I'm constantly, from week to week, I'm just like holding my breath thinking, are they going to do anything? And we get no more testing except false testing, like this testing from the University of California, Berkeley Nuclear Engineering Department. What's happening, Chris?
Well, the testing that's going to have to be on the independent side. I don't think you can rely on any government to look at any kind of testing. I understand what you're doing, and you're trying to find a suitable lab that would use the right procedures to get you the honest and accurate results.
Yeah, and
any results can be fun.
I'm getting a similar response to when I wanted to do isotope testing of the debris from the World Trade Center, which was done by a nuclear demolition. Similar response from the industry here, because I'm sure the secret agencies have talked to them all and said, do not do testing with DEAGLE on these materials and report it to them, or we're in a lot of trouble. Thank you, Chris Harris. Major reports tonight, an hour or two on rents. Don't miss it.